Culture is the sum of all the forms of art, of love, and of thought, which in the course of centuries have enabled man to be less enslaved. This quote by former French cultural ambassador and French novelist André Malraux is only one of the definitions that fit the term culture. As of 2020, there are over 1,500 different definitions for the word culture. It is the invisible bond which ties people together. It refers to the pattern of human activity. The art, literature, language, and religion of a community represent its culture. Our cultural values and beliefs manifest themselves through our lifestyle. Our moral values represent our culture. The importance of culture lies in its close association with the ways of thinking and living. Differences in cultures have led to a diversity in the people from different parts of the world. It is a tangible account of my personal journey towards enlightenment. I, like many other cultural analysts, believe that global awareness is fundamental in the creation of world peace. Cultural discourse and misunderstandings have been at the forefront of most of humanity's evolution. It is relevant to war, peace, religion, education, medicine, technology, and so much more. This documentary follows a collection of interviews and group discussions and talk to them about what culture truly means, how they define it, and have a little fun. I've picked my spot for introductory purposes, so I'm just kind of waiting here for the guys to walk up, and we're going to do some introductions. I think I see them, but I'm not sure if that's them, so I'm not going to put them on camera. But we're going to go ahead and get started with the introductions, get to know them a little bit, ask them, predetermine where their mindsets already are, and they have no idea what we're getting ready to do, so we're just going to jump right into it and hope for the best. So, wish me luck.
Hello, my name is Alante James. I go to Conway High School. I'm a senior and I am 18 years old. My definition of culture would be anything that has to deal with like arts or any kind of traditions that have been passed down from generation to generation.
My name is Jabari Jordan. I'm 18 years old. I'm a senior at Conway High School. My definition of culture is no matter what your race or ethnicity is, it's something that you can identify with. So whether that's music, art, food, no matter what it may be, it's something that you can identify yourself with for your culture.
My name is Morgan Farrell. I am 15 years old. I am in the 10th grade, and I go to Scholars Academy. Culture is what a person exhibits and what they show to represent themselves through actions, through wardrobe, etc.
At first it was a little awkward. The two boys were already friends, so they had a natural chemistry. But it was apparent they didn't know how to regard Morgan, who was 2 years younger than them and attended Scholars Academy. I gave them some time to get acquainted and ask each other a few questions, but then after a while I decided we needed to just jump right in.
Culture, in my opinion, is what people experience, how they express themselves, and how they think of themselves. For example, I'm learning Chinese, and Chinese culture is what people kind of think of how they express how they are. I don't participate in Chinese culture because I am ethnicity Chinese, but I wasn't raised Chinese, so I don't participate in Chinese culture.
While they continued to get acquainted, I decided to adjust the camera and I instructed the boys to sit facing Morgan to give them a more personal approach to the conversation. For some reason, this simple adjustment made conversation a lot easier for them. Maybe because they forgot I was there, or maybe because they were able to engage in the conversation without thinking about the questions that they were answering. So this first exercise that we're going to do deals with, on my page, deals with what we were just talking about. What is culture? What is it? How do we define it? So in this book, in this textbook, it says that there have been founded 300 different definitions of culture. That is how varied that topic is. It differs person to person. And that's just what we know, as in what has been written. But for the most part, it boils down to the shared assumptions, values, and beliefs of a group of people which result in characteristic behaviors. Just between the three of you, taking that idea, what would you say about that definition? If you had to take that in as the definition of culture, do you feel like it's adequate? Is there more you would like to add to it? And whenever you want to go, whoever wants to start.
I mean, yeah, it makes sense too, because that makes sense why there's so many different cultures, because what do you define as like a specific groups of people as well? Because one culture could make up more, like one person could think of a culture as this group of people, but others could think it could be broken down between different ones.
Yeah, to pick up off of what she said, I feel like it has to be, the definition can't be but so specific, it has to be a broad definition. Because like she said, there are so many different cultures in the world that we live in today. So I feel as if that definition gives a nice broad definition of what culture can be to many different people.
Yes, I totally agree with everything that they said. You can't just have one simple definition that defines culture. There are plenty of different cultures, and not every culture has the same religion, not every culture has the same art, not every culture has the same food, so there has to be like a broad definition of culture.
Now that we'd finally begun our little game of debate, I was ready to get the ball rolling. The first activity I had set up for the teenagers involved a simulated situation where they would be asked to answer questions based upon their own cultural perspectives. I was excited to begin this, but I was a little bit worried that mob mentality would get the best of them and they would just end up copying each other's answers. With such a small group, it was inevitable. You, a Westerner, have been invited to dinner at the home of a traditional Brahmin family in India. Here are 9 things a Westerner might do in the course of the evening. And we're going to indicate any behavior that you guys think might be culturally inappropriate in a Brahmin home. So, number 1, you bring a bouquet of white flowers for the hostess. What are we thinking?
Incorrect.
Yeah, I'm saying.
Alright, so number 1, incorrect. Alright, number 2, you remove your shoes and leave them at the edge of the carpet.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm saying that.
Alright. You wander into the kitchen to admire the smells and chat with your hostess.
I'm saying correct. Yeah, I'm saying no.
As I was watching them answer the questions, I realized that the boys were watching Morgan. It seemed to me as if they were relying on her previous cultural experience and kind of using her to guess which answer would be correct. So, to circumnavigate any bias or bogus answers, I had the boys turn back to back and I tilted the camera down so no one could see any predominant answers. Number 4, when more rice is offered to you, you take a moderate amount with your spoon.
I'm gonna say yeah.
Alright, so we've got 1 no and 2 yeses. Okay. You ask for the washroom so you can wash your hands as soon as you have finished eating. Some of them are correct. I know they sound like trick questions, but some of them are.
I'm saying
Just put it
Yeah, just sum up.
oh, my bad.
You good. Alright, so 1, 2, and 3. Okay. In pre-dinner chit-chat in the living room, you sit cross-legged with your foot resting on your knee. Remember where you are. Okay. You compliment your host on the variety of dishes. Alright. You pass serving plates with your left hand. And that's it. You pass plates with your left hand.
So even if it's someone to the right of you, still use your left hand?
Mm-hmm. You use your left hand. Now that I had everybody's true answer, it was time to see what the book had to say. And, well, seems like no one really knew anything. So the correct answer is, for number 1, whether or not bringing a white bouquet of flowers for your hostess is, acceptable behavior. It is not. It is not so common to bring flowers for the hostess in India. Chocolates or cookies are more common. Moreover, white is the color of mourning in India. So white flowers could be especially inappropriate. Go ahead.
I have a friend who is Indian and his parents have moved here. And when I went to their house, she loves to draw flowers and floral things, but I've never seen anything in white. So I used that, also the understanding that in China, white is the color of death. So.
And that's a very interesting added piece. I was thinking about that too. In a lot of cultures, especially Eastern cultures, I've noticed that we, in this side of the world, we recognize black as the mourning color. But as church-going, as African-American church-goers, we also practice that. Your flower bearers typically wear white. Your ushers, they wear white. White is the color of that because death is supposed to be a celebration. So, it is interesting how those types of cultural intertwinings kind of happen for different reasons, but easily understandable. Thank you, Morgan. This is a bit of a trick question for number 2. You remove your shoes and leave them at the edge of the carpet. So I think we know from just movies and the bit of cultural exposure that we have that it is traditional in most Eastern cultures to take your shoes off when you enter the home. But this question was also incorrect. It is not necessarily appropriate because you should leave your shoes outside of the home, not in their home at all. So you wouldn't. That's why they said it was a trick question. Number 3. This you wander into the kitchen and for the smells and stuff. That is inappropriate. Guests do not wander around the Indian home. They stay in the sitting room until dinner is served. But if you should happen to wander, the kitchen is the last place you should enter. But because it is believed you bring in bad luck. You bring in bad energy. You mess up the flow. And the food may end up tasting bad or causing others to be sick. There are other cultures that acknowledge that trend as well. So, and we'll go into that later, but go ahead.
So is that like a cultural thing, or is that more like a common courtesy thing that like you shouldn't just roll around?
Yeah, because my grandmother,
I feel like that should be
her kitchen.
Like, a lot of values and cultures and stuff tend to overlap as well.
Exactly.
So it could be part of their culture, or it could just be a thing that overlaps with multiple cultures.
Definitely, what I actually took the words right out of my mouth is one of those things where the lines get blurred. So for number 4, just as in many Western countries, guests would not serve themselves from a common bowl with one of their own utensils. That is one of those things that is kind of universal. You don't stick the spoon you had in your mouth into the bowl with guests. Now, this was also a bit of a tricky question because in more familial settings where it's just you and your family, you may see that. You may see someone, but it's still kind of like, keep your germs to yourself, you know? Number 5. For number 5, it was you ask for the washroom so you can wash your hands. You might eat with your hands in the Indian home, although this is less common than it used to be. In any case, water and a towel will be brought to the table so you can wash your hands after the meal. So essentially, no, you wouldn't go to the washroom to wash your hands. They have it there for you. But it's not necessarily inappropriate. It is just out of place. It's something that they would look at you weird for. Or they might think that you have to use the bathroom.
Okay.
It's quite appropriate and much appreciated to compliment the hostess on their food. So you complimenting the variety of dishes is a good thing to do. That is definitely appropriate. I think we understood that. A lot of those things were common rules for us. It is rude in India to point the sole of your foot at a person sitting nearby. So no, you would not rest your foot on your knee. Because showing the bottom of your sole is kind of like a
Disrespect.
kiss my butt type of thing. And the left hand is considered unclean in traditional Indian culture, so using it is avoided in many cases. So it was the opposite. It's the opposite. You would not serve with your left hand, you would serve with your right.
Yeah, it's weird to serve with your left hand for some reason.
Like honestly, in India, a lot of them don't grab things with their left hand. They don't take money. And the last question, which was you keep the conversation. In the West, the main reason to invite guests over is to engage them in conversation, either catching up on news or getting to know each other. So that's what we do here. But it is not polite. Oh wait, wrong part. In India, that care goes into preparing the various dishes, reflects in the highest of esteems in which the host holds to the guest. That was phrased so weird. Thus, it is only polite not to chat. Essentially, it's taken as their food isn't good. That should be the main thing you're focused on. You should be so wrapped up in what you're eating that you don't have time to talk. So that was just one exercise to kind of show you, how far and how close a lot of cultures can be. So bridging off of that, what did you think of that exercise? How are you feeling right now getting that information?
I think what I took away from it is that there's a lot that I don't know about Indian culture. Yeah, Indian culture. I guess Indian culture to be exact. I also learned that I didn't realize how much certain cultures overlap and intertwine as they do. So those would be the two things I say that I took away from that exercise.
Yeah, I'll say that I didn't know. We see things that people do during some cultures, but it doesn't mean that it's necessarily what they do all the time. So I'll say that just because we see stuff don't mean that it's a part of their culture normally. So that's basically what I took out. So there's different parts.
I guess it provided a lot of clarity. Because when I went, so I'm really close friends with the one friend who is Indian, and when I went over, his mom made me food, and she wouldn't let me in the kitchen when she was making it. She would shush me out, and I guess it provided a lot of understanding, and it provided more, insight on different cultures and how the relationship between them almost.
I feel like that's something that we as Americans as a whole are kind of ignorant towards, when it comes to other cultures outside of our country. We don't really know as much about them as we should.
Right. We tend to basically we tend to talk about them instead of to get to know them. So there's a difference of when you can see a change and you can see a difference when you start to get to know people culture instead of just automatically going off the back of what you think they are. Sometimes we normally, as Americans, we straight out call them names, or we think, because I would say ever since 9/11, people think that just because the people that did 9/11, they think that all of them are bad. I wouldn't say that all of them are bad. I just think there is a difference between what they do and how they act, and so it's just their culture. We can't really say that just because it's their culture they gonna kill people or anything like that. But different cultures have different things. Different cultures have different communications with people. So I think we should get to take time to know them instead of automatically going off the back of talking about them.
Especially like backing off of what you said with 9/11, Muslim people will intensely don't identify with a lot of minds in America, which made no sense because the people who did the their actions wouldn't make sense with Muslim, their religion.
Yeah.
But not only that, but when we tend to vilify different people and different specific cultures or ethnicities, we tend to be very ignorant when doing so. And due to that, it leads to even worse situation.
And not only that, I think that we should also take time to study other cultures instead of, because like you said, if you really look deeper into like the Muslim religion, that's not really a part of their culture of what happened during 9/11. So just because you believe in one thing doesn't mean that you shouldn't take time to study in other things. So yeah, sorry.
Yeah. To piggyback on what you said, I do think it's important that we do our own research on different cultures and things like that, because what we learn here is very, I feel like in my opinion, it's kind of watered down, and I like to say it's like Americanized, since it's not really truly what their culture is. So I feel like doing your own research is better.
Not only that, but talk about watered down part. A lot of textbooks and other stuff on in school is taught us from the perspective of that textbook review. So it's gonna change the kind to do it.
Right.
And so some information could be false.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna do one more exercise. It's getting late, and some of us do have some other engagements. So this next one takes what we were talking about a minute ago with the whole knowing the difference between what's a cultural rule versus what is just something that's universal. So we're gonna have 3 different letters to identify 3 different ways of thinking. U for universal. Universal meaning, or universalism, meaning that it describes an action that can be applied to anyone. Think a general rule of thumb. We all have to breathe air, right? We all need water in our bodies and we all need food. Those types of, but on a cultural level, those type of generalizations that are just true for everyone in the world. Then you have cultural behaviors. So universal behaviors and then cultural behaviors, represented by C, which are going to be things that are specific to a culture. So you're going to find multiple people from Spain who like to go out for tapas. You're going to find a lot of people in America that enjoy baseball. It's a cultural thing. Then you'll have personal things. Like, I may like rock and roll, not because I'm American, but just because I personally like it. Okay? So I'm going to read off some actions, and I just want you to give me U, C, or P. What you think? So the first action is sleeping with a bedroom door open. Is that a universal behavior, a cultural behavior, or a personal behavior?
That's a P.
Yeah, I said personal.
Personal. Running from a dangerous animal.
Universal.
Universal?
Yeah, universal.
Well, okay. What do you mean by dangerous? Like,
That's all I got for you. Keep it simple.
Like it depends on the animal and how.
I guess I'll say personal.
You gonna say personal?
If it's dangerous, it's universal.
Well, no, because some people consider dogs dangerous.
Yes,
some
I
people
would
don't
run
consider
from a
dogs
dog.
dangerous.
Well,
That's
I'm taking the understanding of no matter the animal, you just think that it's dangerous
Right.
and probably something.
Right. Universal. I was thinking with my answer.
Considering snakes to be evil.
Cultural.
Cultural. Yeah. That's definitely.
Men opening doors for women.
Cultural.
Personal.
Respecting older people.
Universal.
Universal.
You know. Well, no, we don't really have very high respect.
Cultural.
So I'm mistaken.
Yeah, cultural.
Cultural?
Yeah, cultural.
I'm gonna stick to universal.
Okay, so learning one's native language. So learning your native language. Is that a cultural behavior, a personal behavior, or universal?
Cultural.
Personal.
Okay, can you repeat it?
Learning one's native language.
So like if you were born,
You learning English.
you learn that's cultural, I guess.
What do you think?
I guess I'll go cultural. Sure.
Speaking Arabic as a foreign language.
Personal.
Yeah, personal.
Eating regularly.
Cultural.
Cultural.
Eating with a knife, fork, and a spoon.
Universal.
Cultural.
Cultural.
Liking the novels of Charles Dickens.
Personal.
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 Calling a waiter with a hissing sound. So
Personal.
signaling like
Oh no, that's personal. Yeah, that's
Cultural.
Personal. Personal.
And the last one is regretting being the cause of an oh, that's not the last one. Sorry, I lied. Regretting being the cause of an accident.
Cultural.
Cultural. You said personal?
Yes, it's personal.
Alante?
regretting being the cause of an accident.
Wait, being in the cause or being the cause?
Being the cause.
Yeah, that's personal.
Oh, universal.
You said personal, Alante?
I forgot universal was an option. Can I change mine to universal?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna change mine to universal.
Feeling sad at the death of your mother.
Personal.
Universal.
I'm saying personal.
Real personal.
Wearing white mourning robes for 30 days after the death of your mother.
Cultural.
Cultural.
Last one for realsies. Disliking having to wear mourning clothes for 30 days after the death of your mother.
Personal.
Personal.
Cultural.
You said cultural?
Yes.
Alright, so these are the suggested answers. It by no means means anything other than this is what the book would say is the kind of answer.
Okay.
So for number one, sleeping with the bedroom window open, that is indeed personal. All of you got that one. Running from a dangerous animal. Note that what is considered a dangerous animal might be different from culture to culture. So they did note that. It is a universal thing though.
Okay, if what is considered dangerous, different from culture to culture, how can it be universal?
Because the idea is that the main acting thing you're thinking about is you running from the animal, not the animal you're running from.
And it's not just a regular animal, it's a dangerous animal.
It's signifying that the importance isn't on what the animal is, but how you view it.
Okay, alright, I understand.
Considering snakes to be evil is indeed cultural. Men opening doors, again, is indeed cultural.
Did everybody say cultural for that?
No,
No.
I said personal all day.
You did.
Uh,
You said cultural.
I
Yeah.
said cultural for that.
Respecting older people, cultural. Okay.
Does it say in the book which certain cultures don't value like showing respect?
Probably deeper, but no, it doesn't go into the specifics.
But this is the thing, it can be cultural, but some of the people that's in the culture doesn't do.
yeah.
Well, it depends on the culture's weight on it. Like culturally, we don't just walk around slicing people up that we don't like,
Right.
because we have repercussions for that kind of action. But if your culture doesn't really punish you for not abiding to the culture, and that is an interesting thing about America that I wish we had time to go into today, which is why I really want to try to push for another meeting. But the idea.
You can't do it today?
No, he's got to go to church, and I have dance rehearsal, so I do have to
Having
go.
that, but the whole sense of like a big culture versus like individual groups.
Exactly, micro to macro. Definitely has an impact. You have subcultures, so there are cultures within, especially here in America, there are cultures within cultures within cultures, and then hybrid cultures brought together to bring new cultures. For the next question, learning one's native language is universal. Everyone got that wrong. It is universal. You have to learn your native language in order to communicate. You don't get a choice in the matter. You can't remember when you started. Yeah.
Yeah, but then that's also the sense of, is it the native language to which you believe is native, or to which others believe is native?
Native in this case is operating in the same way that dangerous did. It's being more ambiguous than distinctive, more so to describe that whatever your native language is considered to be, the language you first learned to speak in. So whatever language that may be. So if your first language that you ever remember speaking and you, for the most part, spoke when you were learning how to speak, that's your native language.
Something new I learned today was what different cultures could be considered universal, personal, what cultural, what the textbook had said so. Something interesting I learned today was just everyone else's views on what they think it is. Of course, we're not all going to think the same way, but it's interesting to learn how other people think. And something I wish we discussed more on is how we see different cultures. So today we talked a lot about American culture, but there's no one American culture because that's how America is. But there's subcultures within it, but you can consider something as an American culture.
One thing I feel that I learned is that I don't know as much about other cultures as I thought I did and as I would like to know. One thing that I wish we would have talked about more is I kind of mentioned it earlier, the way that we as Americans view people outside of the Western society and how watered down and Americanized everything is. And one thing I took away from it, it's something. I do want to continue the conversation at a later date. Hopefully, we get everybody in person and just go deeper into the conversations and talk about more different subjects and topics.
Agree with what Jabari said. One thing that I did take away that we also discussed about earlier is that we should stop basing cultures on our own opinion, and we should get deeper and learn more about cultures. Because when you start basing cultures off of your own opinion, and you start, I would say, using talking to people that's not in the culture, and they're giving you false information, I would say that we need to study on our own and find out more information about ourselves. Also, one thing that I wish we would have talked about more is I wish we would have talked about other cultures besides, I would say, two cultures that we talked about, I think. But I wish we would have talked about a variety of cultures. And like Jabbar said, hopefully we can come a later date and get deeper into the conversation with more people and more interactions with others.
Okay, so we finished the first day of recording, and from what I gathered in my notes, I really think that it's proved to me even more so just how much we need this. I'm recording in my car on my cell phone because we ran out of space on the camera, and I wanted to get a direct reaction of my experience and share it with the public in the most immediate fashion. They were completely engaged, and it showed me just how little they get to have these conversations. As I reflect on everything I've learned in my time here at Coastal Carolina, I can't help but feel as if it's an end of an era. I'm scared of what may become next, because who knows with this world. But I know that I'm walking away with knowledge that is priceless, friendships that are long-lasting, colleagues and professors that will continue to teach me things as I mature into the next phase. And with my shots up, proud Coastal Carolina University alumni.